Robin, welcome to Beyond the Boardroom.
Great to be here.
You have a huge brain full of incredible information, and we're going to pick some of that out and learn. That's what the goal is for today.
Right.
We're going to be learning. So first, and probably the most important question, what is the maximum amount of friends one should have?
Well, the official limit on the number of friends and family, I hasten to add, that you can have is 150 people, which is Dunbar's number. So that's your extended family and all your friends. One way to think about it is all the people who at least once a year you try to keep contact with. In the old days when people sent Christmas cards, it was exactly who you sent Christmas cards to. So if you totted up everybody in the family that you sent a card to, it comes out to about 150.
150 still seems like quite a lot. If you count, so you're counting friends and family and co-workers in here?
Oh, co-workers can be friends. I mean, that's the difference. Out beyond the 150 is another layer that we think of as acquaintances. And so a lot of the people you work with would be in that sphere, as it were. But some of the people you work with become friends because you get on well with them, you see them after work.
Okay, so when people have like 300 plus friends on Facebook, that's not true.
Well, it's not true anyway. For two reasons. One is the average number of friends on Facebook is actually 149, according to the last census, and that was 61 million Facebook pages.
Right.
That's not to say that some people don't have more than that. But what they do is they do what we do in everyday life, is they're including as friends because that's how Facebook and social media
but they're not
define
really
them. But really what they're including is acquaintances. So acquaintances are people, we go and have a beer with them after work, but we would never invite them home. That's the big difference. The 150 you would invite home.
Could acquaintance be someone you've come across, just someone that,
yes,
I know you, yes.
But I think acquaintance is a bit more than just I met you once at a party and we exchanged phone numbers. Yeah. That you actually see them on a regular basis, and you would go out and do something occasionally with them, even if it's only go and have a beer. Because beyond so the acquaintances layer runs out to about 500 people, and then beyond that is one more layer, which includes people whose faces you can put names to, basically. So they
sometimes.
Well, no, anybody else is beyond that layer. You can't put a name to the face.
Depends on one's memory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these things have a range of variations. So, the average number of friends and family that people have is 150. But the range of variation is probably from about 100 to about 250. So introverts, it would be about 100. Extroverts, it would be about 200.
Okay, so what about
that kind of variation?
Builders, you get the builders around. So are they the group beyond the 150s? You recognise their face, say hi to them in the supermarket when you see them. Hello.
And if you went and had a beer with the builders, they'd probably count in the acquaintances.
Oh, in the acquaintance. Okay, so that's...
if they turned up once, you'd probably recognise them in the street if you saw them again, and you remember who it was. You could sort of put a name to the face, really. But that takes you out to about 1,500 people.
Wow. Well, there's no ways you can remember all those people's names. I mean...
No, it's literally that is the number of faces you can put a name to. And a lot of them are sort of, dare I say it, weird people like... presidents of the United States, or the king or the queen,
I was going to ask you celebrities,
celebrities,
or the TV personalities, all that kind of thing.
But you wouldn't, and is that those relationships are one way. You know who they are, but they have no idea who you are realistically at that level. And as you come in, the acquaintances layer, you both know who each other, but you don't really have a meaningful relationship, and you certainly wouldn't lend them 50 quid.
Okay,
right?
That explains
That's the big
it.
difference.
That's a huge difference. Okay, so then if we go back to the intimate circle, why do some friendships last a lifetime and others not? They're still your friends, so why is it?
And that's because friendships are kind of on a scale of intimacy or emotional closeness. So if you think about the 150 friends and family you have, actually you can easily identify within them a series of gradations of friendship. You can see this beautifully in terms of who you phone most often or who you post to most often on Facebook, for example. Right? It turns out there's a series of layers that occur at very specific numbers. So there's a layer of 5, what we call the shoulders to cry on friends, which are kind of like your support group, as it were, that you go
love
to
that,
in
the
times.
shoulders to cry on. Yeah, it is. It is.
You know, if you when your world falls apart, they're the people who will pick you up and put you back on your feet. Then out beyond that, there's a layer at 15, which is known as the sympathy group, because they're the group of people who, if they died tomorrow, you would be genuinely upset about. Not just sorry that they've died, but you would be genuinely upset. And that seems to be about 15 people. And then beyond that, there's a layer at about 50, which I always identify as your kind of weekend barbecue friends. If you're going to have a dinner party, it would come from the 15 layer. Yeah. You know, 3 or 4 people for a dinner party. If you're going to have a slightly bigger party for your birthday in the garden in the summer with a barbecue, you would go to that layer of 50. And then your 150 is what I call your kind of bar mitzvah, weddings and funerals group.
Yes, they're the bigger group.
The once-in-a-lifetime events, they will come to those.
Yeah, because my husband was actually asking me, I mean, it's very strange in a way to put numbers to these emotional things. I didn't really think about it like, okay, the intimate group of 5, and then we go beyond, and you've got the group of 50 that you invite to a party. But it makes sense.
Yes.
It's kind of spookishly accurate.
I know. It's frightening to say. But I mean, if you ask, as we have done with many of our studies, you ask people to rate these people in these circles for their emotional closeness to them, you can see this beautifully laid out. They feel much more emotionally close. They will give a higher rating to people in that inner core of 5 to say the people in the 150 or the people out in the 500 layer of acquaintances.
And you're right for that garden party. I'm saying how many or who should we invite? It is about, it's just the right sweet spot of 50. Yes. But then you're right, a wedding is
about 150 usually.
Yes, if you have a budget.
You might, I mean, in other cultures, Asian cultures tend to have very big weddings, but what they're doing is they're going out into that layer of acquaintances very often, because there's no family out in that layer of acquaintances, right? All your in-laws and laws, or whatever the proper word is for your genuine biological family, are all contained within the 150. Right? And we don't have, one of the oddities is that extends out to about second cousins-ish.
Yes.
Right? And no culture in the world has a kinship term for anybody who's more remote, biologically more remote than that. So most of them just have different kinds of cousins, and that's as far as they go. After that, you're strangers. Well, you're not strangers, but you're not our kin.
Yeah.
Well, you're not kith and kin.
Yeah, you're there. Yeah. Okay. So let's say you have someone that you meet and you want them to be closer to you, you want them to like you, but you want it to happen faster. How do you do that then?
The whole thing revolves around how often you see people. So another way of defining the layers is simply in terms of the frequency with which you see them. And it turns out that the layers are defined by very specific frequencies of contact. And those frequencies of contact are evident not only in face-to-face contact, but in how often you phone these people, how often you even post to them on Facebook.
This is making me really worried about how I treat people socially.
That inner core of 5 people are people who you generally see at least once a week, right? At least once a week. And the people in the 150 circle, it's at least once a year.
Can I ask you a question? So do you really have these 5 intimate, close people, more or less? Do you?
No, because I'm a bloke.
Come on.
Well, boys have more diffuse, kind of anonymous kind of relationships. They live in a kind of clubby world compared to girls. Girls have much more intimate, dyadic relationships. They can specify much more where people lie. Whereas boys, it really is anonymous. It's out of sight, out of mind. If Jimmy goes off to Thailand for the rest of everybody, who used to go drinking with him or climbing mountains or whatever they used to do together, will shrug their shoulders and say, well, he was fun while he's here. Now, who's next in the queue for membership of our little club?
So it varies, actually. Is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So these are dynamic. I mean, you can't do much about your family. You can throw them out, but and it does happen surprisingly often.
Them off, yeah.
And this is true even, to be fair, of family relationships. They slide up and down this scale from one, the nearest and most emotionally close person to you, to your 150th person. People come and go through the layers, basically. And that's as a consequence of how much time you invest in them. Okay,
so how do you make them like you faster? There would be people who say, I really like that person. I want them to like me more and quicker.
Okay.
What do you do then?
There are several caveats, but the basic thing is to spend more time with them, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's all dependent on spending time. In fact, to get somebody who is outside your 150, so somebody you've basically just met, a stranger, into at least your 15 layer, your regular sort of social little clique, takes about 200 hours of face-to-face contact. Oh. Right? It's hard work. And that's partly because you've also got to drop
200
somebody.
Hours.
You've got to drop somebody. If you want to bring somebody else in, somebody's got to fall out of your circle.
Brutal.
Right? And you see this most clearly demonstrated in romantic relationships because for obvious reasons, not many of us fall in love with the people in our innermost circle, right? They come in from way outside the solar system. Usually they're strangers, but very often we're introduced to them by a member of our extended circles. So that you bring them right into the center and you've now got 6 people instead of 5.
Too much.
But this person is taking, because of the nature of the relationship, is taking up twice as much time. So they're taking up 2 units. So you've actually got 7 units of person time where you should only have 5. And what do? You drop 2 people. So you reduce the size of that circle to 4. And what you usually do is drop a family member and a friend. Right, because that inner circle will typically consist of 2 family members, brothers, sisters, parents, whatever, granny.
That's a huge price. The
person better be just shows how expensive romance is.
That's so expensive.
Yes.
And if you think about, if you're a consultant and you think about your hourly rate and you're talking about this investment of all these hours, it's like, I never thought about this like this. I have to say this is freaking me out, but it's quite disturbing.
Yes.
It's disturbing, actually. So you have to invest more time. You want them to like you?
Yes.
You have to invest more time.
But there's a catch here, and that's what I call the Jane Austen problem.
Okay.
Right. So everybody, what makes a good friendship is this phenomenon known as homophily. We tend to like people who are very similar to us. Right. Not only in kind of traits we don't have any control over, like our sex or our personality or our age. We tend to prefer people of the same sex, the same age, the same psychological personality, particularly on the extrovert introvert. So introverts prefer introverts, extroverts prefer extroverts. Same ethnicity. Let's say it might be race. It might be just people from your village as opposed to the next door village, if you like. So those things we kind of can't do anything about. But there's a bunch of things which we acquire culturally, we learn them, and which define us as a member of a cultural subcommunity. And these are what we call the 7 pillars of friendship. So they're like a supermarket barcode of who you are. They're the things you like, the sense of humor, the music you like, your hobbies and interests, your moral and political views, these kinds of things. And what we're looking for is somebody who resembles us as much as possible. Right. So there you are in a classic Jane Austen situation. Everybody has an ideal. Mr. Darcy, he's rich, he's famous, he's got connections, big house, all this kind of stuff. Entertaining.
Tick.
Tick, tick. So everybody wants to marry Mr. Darcy. Mm-hmm. Well, or be friends with Mr. Darcy, as the case may be. The problem is Mr. Darcy has a choice. Right? So of all the people, he can't be friends with everybody, so he's only going to choose one. What do the rest of you do? Well, you end up marrying, as the case may be, being friends with the curate, who's boring, not very handsome.
Oh, how sad.
Poor.
Terrible.
So most of our friends and even romantic partners, I dare say, are friends of convenience until we find somebody better. So that's why people can easily drop a friend.
That's why, I for my romantic partner, for my future partners, I'm not compromising on this because it's possibly one of the most important decisions of my life. And I must be genuine and I must go for the right person or I'm in trouble forever.
Yes. Well, it turns out that as with friendships, so with romantic partners, is the more similar you are culturally and so on, all the things you have in common, the longer the relationship will last. And we actually, when we first meet somebody, and we actually showed this going on in telephone call data, so phone call logs, and very, very big samples, and in 3 different countries, that when we first meet somebody, we make a big effort.
Yes.
Either to see them or we phone them a lot.
Yeah.
And it turns out that we could predict both how long the relationship, the friendship would last, and its intimacy, that's say which layer it would lie on the basis of the frequency with which that person was phoned in the first 4 to 6 weeks after that number first appears in the call log.
Yeah.
Right. So we make this big effort to engage them, find out we're ticking the boxes all the time. And we kind of go, no, think I'll try somewhere else. Or, yes, perfect.
Yeah, the stronger that energy, because also it has to last a lifetime. It dissipates over time, maybe a little bit, but it needs to kind of keep you going, the fuel.
Well, there is the weird thing that people converge with each other. They do it with friends as well as with romantic partners. So if you see a lot of each other or you live together, inevitably you tend to share experiences. Yes, so you're kind of converging your interests because your 7 pillars, as it were, although what they really seem to point to is where you grew up, your teenage years, where you learned how to be a member of the community, whatever that community might be. There's something about that period in life that then becomes a benchmark. You never quite, the music of that period, you never quite forget.
It's true.
That's true. Right. It's the real marker for that, isn't it? But of course, we have different experiences as we go through life. So your musical taste may change, your sense of humor may change, whatever your moral views might change. But part of that is trying to bed into a new community. So as you move, your friendship circles change. You move into a job in a different city or a different country or something. You're trying to embed into it, and you adjust your. I mean, one of the components of this is your dialect. Right, and therefore your accent that identifies where you grew up, and children from the age of 5 know whether your accent is the same as mine or not. Right, whether it's the local one or it's somebody from outside. We're incredibly good at identifying them. But of course, if we move somewhere else, then we try to bed in, and you get this phenomenon which is known as mid-Atlantic, which was very common, particularly in the 70s and 80s, when a lot of people moved to America from Britain, and they tried to become more Americanized. You had this sort of semi-Americanized thing.
Yes.
Right? And I did that. I mean, I came to Britain when I was 12, right? So I had a completely different accent.
Yeah.
And
you had to
reinvent
yourself.
I had to reinvent myself, but I never completely lost that accent. So my accent nobody can ever figure out where I come from because I don't sound like a native English or Scottish.
Yeah, because I can hear a bit of that. Yeah, but it's nice not to lose that because it's also part of you. And although you're reinventing and you're adapting and you trying to fit in, it's almost at school, you're trying to fit in, and that you don't want to fit in too much.
That age, you're much better at learning a new accent in the kind of, up to say the end of the teens. I mean, the younger you are, the better you learn it.
Yes.
But after the teens, in your 20s onwards, you never quite learn the local accent to perfection. Local speakers can always tell just the way you pronounce the odd word or the odd syllable, or the way you use a word in the wrong place.
Okay, can I ask you this question? And this wasn't one that we discussed in the pre-podcast call, but let's just say, we're talking about fitting in here in order to make the group comfortable with you and all that sort of thing. But what if you're the type of personality that sort of comes in and is a bit of a like, and they're interested in that, a little bit scared, but then you don't really want to necessarily fit in because you are that sort of person that isn't a fitter inner, if you know what I mean. Because there are some people like that.
This is a kind of version of the Mr. Darcy effect, because you're being parachuted in from far outside the village and you're very exotic. The way you do things, your accent, whatever, and the way you behave. And that does have a certain attraction. But
so that can work.
It can work.
It can work for
but it's a high-risk strategy.
That's a risk strategy.
It's a high-risk strategy. If you want an easy life, try and meld in with everybody else. But if you have to be very confident, I think, as an extrovert, and you have to be very sure of how you can handle situations and people, because people are very easily put off by boastfulness, which has no substance.
Yes.
And the same.
Can you call it narcissism and all that sort of that toxic?
That's right. Those sort of people can be very successful.
Yes.
But by and large, they're successful as bullies rather than as people managers.
So what's the difference between that? Someone who's genuinely, let's say, the exotic, confident, doesn't mean badly to anyone, is just by nature such a person. And then the one that is maliciously, I don't even know the difference, because maybe they're not trying to be malicious, but maybe they just are a bit, what is that thing that is so horrible?
It's charismatic leadership, actually, is what it boils down to. And we're very prone to following people who appear charismatic and appear to have gifts that are greater than the ones we have, that they make good leaders to follow. And we do it all the time. Pop stars, celebrities, people who invent stuff and become, CEOs, charismatic CEOs of a big organization. And that kind of has a place in our social world, because in the end, social world is about cooperation and diplomacy, but you can't have sort of 500 braves in the organization. You've got to have some chiefs somewhere to provide kind of direction and strategic things.
Stability.
And that's what your charismatic leader does.
Yeah.
So that then becomes a kind of focus. And we kind of do it all, why do we have a monarchy here? It's not in itself very important. It is a figurehead.
Of course.
It's a flag.
Yeah.
And you can sort of attach yourself to the flag as kind of standing for, your wider community. And some countries take this very seriously. If you think of the United States, in school, every morning, they pledge allegiance to the flag, as a school. And I'm sure it has this effect of creating this sense of community in a way which we no longer do.
Yeah. Sense of community is important. It is important. So just going back to the whole acquaintance thing, just to clarify, so if you want someone to upgrade from acquaintance to close circle, it's about the time. You have to invest the time. And then is it so that some people are just naturally better at making friends, having friends, keeping friends, and some just don't have those skills? Or are we all born with the same thing?
No, we're definitely not all born with the same skills, because the skills of managing a social environment, whether it's an organization or just your friendship circle or even your family and even your romantic relationships, all hinge around a core set of cognitive abilities which we all share, but not to the same extent. So they're quite variable. And now the key ones are probably the ability to understand what somebody else is thinking. Right? Now, the way that's viewed is we're very good at sort of thinking through a chain. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about what Jim over there is supposing and what somebody else. That's right.
Chess.
That's right. It is chess, actually. Exactly so. Now, and that's a very good analogy, because clearly, superstars in chess, what makes them superstars is they can think through many successive
and
moves.
good salespeople.
Well, that's true, yes. Whereas, a very bad chess player like me, just can only think one move.
I can't believe you're a bad chess player.
One move
I can't
at a
believe
time.
that.
So the natural, the range, although the average mentalizing abilities allows us to handle 5 people's mind states, including my own. So that's me thinking about 4 other people. The range of variation is from about 3 till about 6, probably.
Ooh.
Right. So some people, and that has very, very wide consequences. So one of the things we've shown is that people who have the average capacity of 5, being able to handle 5 mind states, prefer fictional stories which have 5 or 4 mind states going on in the same thing. And the place to see this is Shakespeare. He's absolutely wonderful about it, because the number of speaking parts he has on the stage at any one time is never more than 4.
Incredible.
Right? But if they're talking about somebody's mind state, Hamlet, who's not there, so it's Hamlet's friends talking about Hamlet's mind state, and he's doing whatever he was doing somewhere else, he reduces the number to 3. And what he's doing is making sure he doesn't overload his audience's abilities. Right?
That is smart. Wow.
3, normal human adults, there's nothing unusual about them, as it were, psychologically. The lower limit is about handling 3 mind states. And that's perfectly fine. You can get by in the social world and conversations and all these things quite happily with third order mentalizing, as it's called. But it does mean that a 5th order mentalizing story just becomes incomprehensible to you.
Overwhelming.
So you like stories which involve only a couple of people's mind states. And this applies to our preferences for humor as well. Those with 5th order mentalizing prefer long, complicated jokes with several characters in them, whereas people with sort of 3rd order mind states capacity will prefer 3rd order jokes. That's, say, only two characters in the joke.
Such a scientific way of thinking about such things in life. I can't.
So there's that, and what we tend to do is pick people who are similar mind state, mentalizing competence. Also, the other thing is the capacity to inhibit your selfish desires, your tendency to grab the biggest thing on the plate. Because if you do that too much, then you just drive everybody away. Right, so if you can't, to keep everybody round the table, you need to be able to inhibit yourself from grabbing everything that you want, and in order to allow them to have a bit of a share of the cake.
There's a lot of social awareness to keeping these friends.
Yes. So
it's hard work.
So people vary a lot on both these traits, and therefore, that has implications for both the stability of relationships. People who have very poor inhibitory capacities, and this appears very early in life. You can predict people's relationship stabilities in their 40s from how good they are at not grabbing the sweets on the table when they've been told at the age of 5.
Wow.
Right.
Parenting 101.
Well, the problem is it's pre-parenting. I mean,
it's even pre.
Those are exceptional. I mean, there tends to be a genetic component to it, and the thing is beyond change, as it were, for those sort of people. It's extremely hard for them to learn to be tolerant in that sense. They just fly off the handle all the time.
Yes.
And these kinds of things.
Can I ask another question then? There are things going around social media, and actually I've liked some of these. Sometimes I'm going to admit this now, where it's like, sometimes I'm just happy coming home to my pet.
Yes.
I just, a cat or dog, it's like, just much rather spend time with them than having to socialize. And I mean, friends are nice and everything, but it's hard work. And then your cat or your dog, nice pets, even watching some birds. I mean, I'm getting older. I'm not ashamed to say it. Sometimes you just want to chill out and not see these friends.
Yep. Well,
is that okay?
But it is okay. There's absolutely no prescription why you have to have people in your
And
5 closest
so nice.
relationships or your 150 friends and family. You're perfectly entitled to have your pets.
I'm not saying never. I'm just saying sometimes.
Yeah,
Never.
No. But I think that's partly because cats and dogs, because of the way we've domesticated them, are so responsive to us and so giving in that sense that they're the perfect friend.
They're never in a bad mood.
Exactly. And they're like the perfect friend. And so the temptation, whereas normal people vary and they have their own interests. They want a share of the cake on the table. In fact, they'd rather have a slightly bigger share than you. Whereas, well, I was going to say your dog will let you have half, but actually he probably wouldn't.
No,
but anyway,
it's fair enough. But you'd happily let them have that. That's the thing. You'd sacrifice yourself, wouldn't you, for your pet, your friend?
Yeah, and I think
not
that's not uncommon.
Yeah,
that people have very close attachments.
I was happy actually to see the posts on Facebook. So I thought, it's like me. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about. There's something I read on your LinkedIn. Which is about gossip, and that's a really lovely, good thing. Why would you say something like that? Because gossip for me, I do find sometimes when I go into these circles and chatting, and it tends to be actually a lot of the time, the sort of the mum with the kids crowds, and then the gossip starts, and there's someone being sold at all times, and I always why?
Well, this all hinges around how you define gossip.
Okay.
Right. So that kind of horrid sense of gossip, right, wicked sense of gossip, is actually relatively recent. It's not the original meaning of the word gossip.
Okay.
So the word gossip is a corruption of God sib, right? So the peer group equivalent of your godparents. So the people who look after you and you hang out with. And therefore the older sense of gossiping is literally, in English, hanging over the garden fence, passing time with your neighbours, right? All inconsequential, probably, doing no more than saying it's a lovely day today.
That's
isn't
different,
it? It's just hanging out with them.
Hanging out, yeah.
The problem, with anything in an evolutionary biological world, is it can always be exploited for both good and bad. And like many things, this capacity to pass information. So there is a sense in which gossip, this positive sense of gossip, plays an important role in managing our relationships, because you, by definition, cannot possibly know everything that's happened 24 hours a day to all your 150, you can't even do it for probably your romantic partner as the one closest person in position number one, because some of the time they're elsewhere, right? So what we rely on is a chain of information flow, i.e. gossip, through the network created by our 150s. And you see this particularly with families. So that in family contexts, there's almost always a person called a kin keeper.
Okay.
Usually female, because they do it best. But what their role is to keep everybody up to date on how everybody's doing, how little Jemima's new baby is getting on.
I might be guilty of that as well.
But they play a terribly important role. I feel
really
like
it's my duty to say to, so-and-so this has happened,
And you, in some sense, family networks are better than friendship networks from this point of view, because there are so many interconnections. It's like a spider's web. So you can get information. If Jemima doesn't tell you, Penelope will,
Information transfer.
Yes. It's all about information transfer. Now, that helps us keep up to date with how things, and therefore you don't make faux pas when you bump into somebody and, you say, I know, maybe they just got married or something like that.
You don't want to be doing this.
And you don't want to say, how lovely, only to discover, in fact, they got divorced the next day.
Yeah.
Right. And you didn't know about it. So all those kind of dreadful things, which can be very, they're the kind of thing that cause friendships and family relationships to break down. So it's a loss. What causes breakdowns? I mean, by this, I mean terminal breakdowns, right?
Yes.
Catastrophic breakdowns is either loss of trust, or over-exploitation. You just end up doing all the work. They're always borrowing stuff off of you, never paying you back, these kind of things. Or it's sort of just not knowing what's going on in the relationship and always sort of saying things either in public or unintentionally,
and not caring,
perhaps, but just saying things which, offend you or hurt you or whatever, right? So being, and that's because they're not really engaging well enough with you. So, you kind of go, sod it.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm not talking to you ever again. That kind of information flow then becomes very important. But like a lot of these things, these capacities can be exploited for gain, as in the propaganda sense.
The PR kind of
PR
spin,
right? And that leads you very quickly. And that, of course, is also important because you do want to know if somebody in your social world, or maybe your charismatic leaders, are behaving in ways which are bad for you and your interests, or you consider are unacceptable in some way, right? So you don't keep following or keep retaining as a friend somebody who actually has changed so dramatically that you don't want to be seen out with.
Yeah.
Right. So that there is a sense in which hearing about the negative side of gossip becomes important. But once you have that in the system, it's only a very short step to somebody exploiting it and using it to promote themselves or over-promote themselves, or to cast aspersions on somebody else's character who's a rival, right? So that happens a lot. But what's interesting in this context is we actually are very intolerant and do not like people who overplay the negative gossip card too much.
Okay, explain.
Well, it gossips in that sense, so the negative sense, tend to get shunned socially because they are regarded as unreliable. So they're not going to keep your secrets.
Yeah, because you think you'll do that about me.
Yes, right. If they're telling me all these tales about Jemima down the road.
I don't know. Some of them seem quite socially flourishing. I don't know.
Well,
maybe in a different.
They can be because they provide information. So and that's why they do it. At one level, anyway. It gives them. It makes them into a kind of charismatic leader. So people come to them for information.
Gosh.
But on the other hand, you probably don't want to, commit yourself emotionally too much to that sort of person because
you can't trust. Yeah, it is trust. Trust is the hugest thing in the world for relationships.
Central to all these relationships.
Vital. But then again, if they can broadcast information that you want released. They're broadcasters in a way.
Yes. I mean, you can play the game and feed them information you want to get out. But
you never know how reliable they are. Okay, so what's the key ingredient? I think it is trust, isn't it?
It is trust.
Deep friendship, long-lasting. Yeah. That is the cornerstone. And that empathy as well, too.
Well, empathy is the kind of route to creating trust, because what seems to, and this is kind of the interesting feature of the 7 pillars of friendship, that kind of these kind of cultural dimensions that define our relationships. What they seem to do is to act as a shortcut to identifying people we can trust, because it identifies the community they're from, and therefore we know how they think. We know the kind of ways, people in that community, how they view the world, what they expect of other people in terms of behavior and their values and all these kind of things. So it's a shortcut to that, which allows you to, otherwise you've got to spend all this time getting to know them. Whereas if you sort of come out with your little checklist,
this is a shortcut.
Do you like such and such a joke? Do you like so and so's music? Do you believe X is the case?
It's like a business investment. It's like, what sort of company will I invest in? What sort of human will I invest in? Right, you've got these things. Shortcut, yes. Less, a few hours. 200. It's costly.
But that's because business or any organization, whether it's a government department or a private business, is a social world.
Gosh.
Right? It's people doing stuff, collaborating to produce a product of some kind, whether it's designing the layout of the streets and making sure there are enough, sort of sewers and electric cables and stuff for the businesses and houses around, or literally producing a product that other people might want to buy. All those organizations are built around trust, essentially, that people will do their share of the work and will provide the right kind of leadership and fulfill their tasks, as it were, properly in the grand scheme of things. And if when businesses sort of fall down, or organizations of that kind fall down, when trust is lost, and that doesn't make any difference whether it's a kind of, I don't know, a little club of dog lovers of some kind, the sort of a particular interest, if you like, or a sports club run by volunteers, or an organization, a big organization like a business. When the people lose trust in the leadership, the thing falls apart.
So is a leader socially, in a social circle, would you consider a leader, a social leader, someone who makes the effort to bring friends together and organizing, I'm coming to town, let's meet up, so-and-so, you come from there, organizing, planning the logistics? Is that, what do you think about people like that care enough, that organize these things, what are they? Is it a good force?
Being as I'm not that sort of person, it's a thankless task.
It is, isn't it?
But you've got to have it. I mean, you won't have a group, basically, you won't have a community if you don't have people who are willing to be the leaders. That's really what a charismatic leader does. Not only do they provide the kind of figurehead for the organization, but they also provide, in some sense, the structure to it, and make sure, their commitment, in some sense, is to make sure everything works within it, and that people are introduced and in the way you suggest. And that's partly because that's very time-consuming to do for most of us, and it's a thankless task. But what's interesting is it becomes necessary to have that kind of structural organization once your little community, whether it's a business or a voluntary group, gets above about 40 people. So as it hinges around that 50 layer, if it's smaller, and we've shown this with communities of practice in business, if the community is smaller than about 40 or 50 people, everything can be done democratically. You don't need a leader. You don't need a committee. People volunteer, and somebody will organize the room, and somebody will get the biscuits and the tea in without being asked to do it. And things get done. Once you get above 50, you get this extraordinary rapid phase shift where if you don't have a kind of management structure of some kind, so you have a committee that's responsible for it and going around begging people to turn up to the next meeting, things won't happen. Yeah. People will just drift away. And any group that tries to be democratic in that sense, that's bigger than 50, simply doesn't survive.
Yeah, you need a strong leader to manage a big group. And okay, so what then makes people want to push others away? Because you've got that thing too where you think, oh, no. What's that all about?
I think it's just basically the fact that you don't connect with them, right? You've got nothing in common with them. So all these things that create this homophily effect, both are biological and psychological traits, but also these cultural traits, the 7 pillars of friendship. At the end of the day, if you don't have enough connection with people, the relationship won't last, right? So this is, the classic case is, I don't know, you're there in the bar at Ibiza or some seaside place, and it's 4 a.m. and there's only one other person in the bar, and it turns out you both happen to be enthusiasts for tiddlywinks, right? So suddenly you've got a friend for the night.
Yeah.
But because it's only one tiny dimension of all the possible points of contact, that friendship is not going to survive the aeroplane journey home, right? When you go home, you'll never think about them again. But for that one night, it works well. And you see this happening all the time. It's what I call school gate friendships, right? And it's very, very common. So, you particularly sort of in the primary school period for your children, because you have to go and collect them from the school, all the parents are standing around, and the kids will come out and say, can Jemima come and play?
Yeah.
And so the parents get to talk to each other because they have to give permission, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the kids are such good friends, the parents start to spend time together because they want to do things at the weekend. Maybe they go on holiday. And then as time goes by, and either the kids move to different senior schools or further on go to different universities, at that point, the kids stop being friends, probably because they meet new people, and the parents stop being friends. And what happens then is they bump into each other in the supermarket, in the aisle in the supermarket. Say, I haven't seen you for ages. You must come round. I'll give you a call.
And they don't.
And a year later, exactly the same little cartoon is repeated again. The same aisle in the same supermarket.
Gosh, this is only too close to home. This is so frightening. But yes, this happens to everyone. This is just one of those. You can't force this stuff.
No. But it's also, it's part of the fact that your social network is dynamic. Yes, okay, you're stuck with the identity of your family, although you can move them up and down the layers. But with friendships, because you're meeting new people as you go through life who become more interesting to you because of your current kinds of interest, and people's interests drift apart when they're not together. So if you don't see somebody, this is the experience you have when you go back to a school reunion at the age of 40 or 50, right, for the first time. And all these people, kids that as a teenager, you spent all your time with, partying with, and doing all sorts of wicked things with. And you meet them again when you're 40 and 50 and you go, oh my God, they're awful. Was I really friends with these people? And it's simply because you've drifted apart and had different life experiences, and therefore kind of different things become important to you. So that's a normal part of the dynamics of friendship. If you don't constantly live together, that's what keeps you in line, as it were, because you're having the same experiences all the time. My experience is slightly different with that in the sense that I went to boarding school. So I think... So did I.
You did? So you stay closer with the people because you spend more time with them. It's quite intense. I think that's probably true, and so it's formative years. Yes. Although you also drift apart and, eventually, but it's a little bit different. No, I think, but I think there is, you have to remember also, there is a little core here of very, very close friends. So you spend a lot of time with, I don't know, let's say 10 or 12 kids as a teenager partying together. But out of those 10 or 12, you have one or two who are really close friends. Yeah, of course. As it were. And it's those close friends will never be lost. You can pick those friendships up again 20, 30 years later, exactly where you left off. And I think it's because they were so close. The emotional component of it is ground in stone, whereas the others who are slightly less important to you, the intensity of the emotion wasn't quite so great. It's the intensity of the emotion. Yeah. That's why, when you meet someone that you really, fall in love with, and there is a saying, when you know, yes, because it's the intensity of the emotion. Yes. And all this nonsense about you have to wait approximately 3 weeks or half a year or 1 year before you must get married, and you dare to do it before. All that nonsense needs to go out the window, doesn't it? When you know, it's just one of those things. Yes, but the problem is you are at risk always of making a bad judgment, even so, right? You might think they took all the boxes, but actually you haven't had enough experience. So what normally happens is it's a weird thing because you have to have this kind of rosy sunglasses effect. Otherwise, you wouldn't get off the fence. Right? Yes. You've got to have something to make you get off the fence and go and talk to the person. Reason. And sort of, do you fancy a dance or whatever, in order to build a relationship. And that's not going to happen if you don't have this kind of all your critical faculties are shut off because what you see is a Greek god or a Greek goddess, right? But the rosier the sunglasses at that point, the longer the relationship will last because it takes longer to rub the shine off the statue, as it were. Because in the course of life, you get a lot of ground truthing that goes on where they forget your birthday. They forget to turn up when they said they would turn up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most of which you kind of forgive initially until it happens often enough. You say that's it.
But that ground truthing becomes important. So it's a kind of weird split, as it were, between the need for this thing just to get you off the fence and go and make the relationship, which starts you off well, and the fact that you can get overcommitted. And where that comes out is in romantic scams on the internet, because that's exactly how the scammers work. What they're playing on is that if they don't allow you ever to meet them, you become more and more besotted with this avatar that you've created in your own mind, to the point where when you finally meet them, it doesn't matter what they look like or how badly they behave. You are so forgiving, it's unbelievable. And you just hand over all your money. But they play a very long game on that, because
but that's a red flag too. There's the red flags. These are, I think, people normally show you who they are, and it happens relatively early on, and you've just got to pay attention that when they do show you who they are, you say, I see you for who you are.
Yes. Well, it's back to this first 4 to 6 weeks after meeting somebody. You need to see them often and frequently in order to have enough experience of them and kind of get a feel for what the real person beneath the shine is actually like.
Oh, it's quite fun, isn't it? It's all this stuff, all these things. So we know the healthiest number now are friendships, and we know how important it is to spend time and invest and build trust, and we know about your number. So your brain can maintain, well, can it, more than one intimate relationship at a time? You said up to 5. What if you replaced all those friends and then you had 5 intimate? I'm not planning to do this. I'm just asking for other people who are watching who might want to do this. I have all kinds of people on my channel. You don't know.
We're now into consultancy.
I'm just asking for the audience who would potentially. Could you have 5 intimate relationships at the same time? I mean, really?
Not romantically intimate relationships.
Not?
It seems not.
Okay.
Because what happens, where at least in our data, when people claim to have 2 romantic relationships, and I say 2 sexual relationships, one is always takes precedence over the other. So one is at the pole position of the inner core of 5, and the other tends to be pushed down into the next layer. Wow. And that tends to be the previous.
So it's always the favorite anyway.
It looks like it. It looks like it's very difficult.
And that's based on science.
That's based on science.
No one can.
I mean, you can have pseudo-romantic relationships or sexual relationships with lots of people, but then they're not going to necessarily have the intimacy and the emotional intimacy of that inner core.
Okay.
And that's partly because it becomes, that probably is partly because the nature of sexual relationships have this intimacy and emotional component to it, that it makes it very difficult if anything goes wrong with the relationship. So if you're, sort of stood up, as it were, by a partner, it is so destructive of your mental state. You want to break the relationship completely. So it either has to be slightly anonymous, it seems, or some sort of gradation where you can keep a balance between your emotional commitment. Because the problem is your emotional commitment for relationships in general is limited, right? You've only got, and essentially that means
choose wisely.
Time, right? So you can choose to have lots of friends who are very weak friendships, or you can have a few strong ones and some super weak ones.
I find it totally exhausting to have lots of the shallow conversations. I find it so difficult, the playground chat. It absolutely drains me of every cell in my body. I can't take it. It's like, oh, hello, how are you doing? And the way that I find it exhausting. If I am going to talk to someone, I want it to be meaningful and deep, and I'll tell you the truth, and please tell me your truth, and then we can have that moment.
Exactly.
And then it's nicer than, actually I prefer a huge crowd, and then I don't have any responsibility to them. I'm talking to them, but.
So this is kind of difference between introverts and extroverts, because introverts seem to have, so basically what's going on is you're trying to manage this little group, this little inner clique of, maybe only 3, 4 or 5 people who provide you with your deep emotional support, who are, when crisis happens, they will drop everything to come and pick you up, as it were. Right? So to keep them in the loop, you have to invest very heavily in them and maintain the relationship. Of course,
Investment.
They are then having to do the same to you. It's a
I never thought about it like this, but it's an
process.
investment.
Yes.
Gosh.
Now, what seems to happen is introverts are kind of risk averse. So they really want to be sure that when disaster happens, and the problem is you can't legislate for it. It's too late to go and ask somebody to help you out in those sort of states of affairs, as it were. If you don't already have a relationship with them, you have to have set that up ahead of time, well ahead of time, for them to be willing to do it. So what they want to be sure is that the people they have in that little group really will do the job. So they'd rather have fewer of them and invest more time in each one. And that means they have smaller networks. Whereas extroverts seem to trade on their social skills, as it were, and social confidence to handle weaker relationships. So their view is, well, if Jemima turns me down and won't help, I'll go and ask Philomena, because somebody will do it.
Somebody, but
and then what they have is more friendships. So their social networks are bigger than 150, but the average emotional closeness is much weaker.
So you call that? Are you saying that I'm an introvert? Because I don't know. Now I'm worried.
There's nothing wrong with being an introvert.
Well, I don't know. I'm a podcaster and all that sort of thing. I don't know. No, I did all those like Myers-Briggs things, and I've always been like a communicator, and I'm into sales, and I definitely don't shy away from a crowd and all that sort of thing. It's just that these little chit-chat things, I find them slightly pointless. I know we have to do them, and I know why. I know that obviously, we have to do that, but it is exhausting. And then maybe I am fine.
Yeah, and I think it's more exhausting for introverts than it is for extroverts, because extroverts tend not to think about it. They're just operating in
check mode.
Automatic mode. Open the mouth, things will come out. Whereas introverts tend to think more carefully about what they're. Well, that's what I think, because I'm an introvert too.
Yes. Okay. No, I don't know what I am at introverts. I'm confused so bad. Right. This one is a big one. Why do families fight so much and so badly? Why? We're supposed to be tight. What's the problem?
Yes. And in general, they are very tight relationships. But the problem is, in the end, it comes back to this trust issue, primarily. The one thing that will cause relationship breakdown of any kind is a breakdown of trust. And that can be exaggerated by competition for resources within the family.
Like what?
Right. Access to, I don't know, a particular, but let's say mum or dad as a
so fighting over mum and dad's attention?
Source of support.
Holy guacamole. Okay.
And ultimately, the big test case is when the parents die. That's when families fall apart, because they start arguing about who gets what. It's extremely common, extremely common. But in general, that can happen at any time. And because you have these very close relationships, you spend a lot of time with these people, you're kind of much more attentive to how evenly balanced the relationship is. Are they getting more than me? Am I having to do all the work all the time? And those little niggles create sort of fracture lines that eventually, if you get enough of them, cause terminal collapse. And what's interesting is, this probably doesn't apply to kind of your second cousins twice removed.
Yep.
But, that inner core of sort of siblings, parents, grandparents, whatever, cousins maybe, when you fall out with them, it is catastrophic almost always. These are deathbed reconciliations only, literally. Whereas with friendships... It's
horrible that you just said that.
With friendships, when you fall out with them, you tend to just drift away from them. You just stop seeing them before you get to that point. It's easier to come in,
but I think, with this betrayal, trust, this emotional raw stuff, it's tough to fix that.
But I think it's because you are by definition, with any close relationship, whether it's a friend or a close family, you are more forgiving. So they stand you up once, it's just Jim again,
Yeah, he's just like that.
Yeah, it's always like that. But eventually, when it happens often enough, you kind of go, enough is enough. And at that point, it is terminal because you've committed so much trust and emotion that you feel very let down. Whereas if a casual friend, and the same is true with romantic, it's what happens with romantic relationships, as it were, and divorces. It's what happens with best friend relationships when they part company for the same reason. And they are irreparable. Whereas somebody more distant, you just stop seeing them long before you get to that point.
It's not that deep, as my teenager says. It's not that deep.
And that makes it easier then to reconcile because, they can, after a reasonable gap, can try to repair the relationship in some way. Well, and you're open to accepting it. But with these catastrophic relationship breakdowns, you've committed so much emotion to it and feel so badly let down that nothing is going to persuade you.
It's that investment. It hurts.
Yes. Well,
but then also, is
overinvestment.
Overinvestment. But is it also that with our family and our partner, whatever, we set the bar really high when it comes to trust and the standards we expect from them. And you cannot do this. And also the expectations of our parents. You're supposed to be like this, like this, like this, like this. My sisters, brothers, you have to behave like that. Partner, I expect all these golden standards. And the higher the standards, the bigger the drop.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah. Don't have standards then. No, do have standards. Please have standards.
Well,
if they let you down, then sorry.
But it's a trade-off. There are no absolutes in real life, right? There are only trade-offs. So you are free to, if you want to set the bar very high, that's fine because that produces a very strong relationship. But the risk you run is that it's kind of, you're asking for perfection where perfection can never exist, and therefore the relationship at some point may be put at risk of fracture. Whereas and that's because you expect a lot out of the relationship, and you're going to give a lot in return, as it were. The equation balances. Whereas with more casual friendships, you kind of don't expect quite so much attention to the detail. If you invite them 10 times too many to your party, to the number of times they invite you to their parties, you kind of go, well, they're just frothing in the crowd. They make up the numbers, whatever, and you're more forgiving of it. And therefore, when they do something that upsets you, is usually not a catastrophic upset. It's more, if you're going to behave like that, I'm not going to bother. And not going to bother means you don't pick up the phone to arrange to see them, and therefore you don't see each other, and the emotional quality of the friendship decays steadily with time in a natural way.
Can I ask you something of the present phenomenon, which is called ghosting? I just think, I understand why people do it, but I just think it's so rude. Yes. I think it's so hurtful. It's so rude. Just say you don't like it. I spoke to the Apprentice winner the other day. He's made a lot of money, sold his business with Lord Sugar. He's a busy guy. He's doing all these things. He's got so much going on, and he doesn't ghost people. When they send, business, are you interested? Da, da, da. No, thank you. I'm not. Thanks for reaching out. Not interested. Takes a millisecond. Boom, boom, boom. Done. And he does that because he said, I'm a brand as well. And any interaction with me, I don't want to be the ghoster. I don't want to be the one that doesn't respond. I don't want to be that. And I had a out of the 5, I would put in the top 50 person I reached out to, and I got ghosted. And I just thought, but it's so strange that you would have ghosted me. I just think, would you not have? It's just polite. It's manners.
Yes. No. Well, yes. And that whole point is that's one of the key skills. What keeps relationships going, what keeps communities going, organizations going, are the skills of diplomacy, right? They're these abilities to understand how somebody else is seeing the situation. So I can kind of adjust how I interact with you in a way that keeps you in the loop, rather than putting you off and messing you about.
Yeah.
This ability to inhibit your natural instincts to, emotionally jump to conclusions, as it were, the red mist rising.
Yeah.
Those skills and this ability simply to be courteous to people, right? Because that's exactly the kind of thing that undermines trust. If you just don't answer, you kind of go, what have I done?
But I can understand why some people don't answer as well, because it's also effort, investment, and difficult and uncomfortable to say no to someone.
Yes.
You might be scared to say no to them. So you'd rather
but there's also a situation, I mean, one of the problems of the moment created by the internet, essentially, and social media, is we just get overwhelmed all the time with contacts. So the scale of it is, in the days when we wrote letters, you would write a letter to somebody saying, can you tell me about something or other? Maybe ask for some information. They would send it back, and you might send a note back which just says, thanks very much. End of the story. Now with email, you feel a compulsion to reply to every reply. So you end up sort of meaningless replies in
and
a
so
chain.
Some of those are
take
manipulated.
Up time.
Apologies to interject, but to say, oh, can I add that to your calendar now? Can we add? Would you like to schedule a meeting today in 15 minutes? Like, oh no, please.
Yes,
God,
exactly. But I think that's
too
what
much,
causes a lot of, if you like, the ghosting is that. And I know I do it all the time, because somebody emails and says, ask the question, and you kind of go, well, I don't know what the answer is.
Yes.
I need to think about it.
But
right? And you park it, and then the problem is you forget about it. And you come across it about 2 months later, you're like, oh my God,
it's understandable.
I never replied.
It's understandable. But I was saying that in that top 50 crowd, the one where like it's someone that you know and you've interacted with and you might have done business with them or whatever, that then becomes that's actually not. That's a little bit.
I mean, if you think about it in terms of your, historically, as it were, if you go back 100 years, everybody lived in small villages of a couple of hundred people. Everybody knew everybody else. Everybody was in everybody's 150. They just orientated differently, right? So most of the time, you had enough capacity to manage the relationships you had. Now what happens is we move so much. You go to university, you grow up here, you go to university there, you get your first job somewhere else, you move after a few years to a different city, to a different country, and you end up with little pockets of people. So what you're accumulating is not 150 people who are relatively stable, as used to be the case, but you're getting you in effect, your 150 is being pushed up towards 1,500 people.
Gosh,
and you're not able to cope with that. You just don't have the time. It's very.
We haven't evolved. We haven't evolved to that. We have to keep evolving and adapting.
The problem is time. Time is fixed. You can't
no more time.
Create time because each relationship has its own time demand depending on the emotional closeness, which layer that dictates how much time you have to invest. Because if you don't invest that time, that relationship will decay inexorably.
Yes.
It takes about 2 years of not seeing a person for them to move from, say, your 15 layer, so a good regular social friend, to become just an acquaintance, somebody I once knew.
That's frightening.
That's if you don't see them at all.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what tends to happen. If you think about your experience, you went away to university somewhere, you had this little group of people you did stuff with, and then you all parted company and went different parts of the world, right? And some of them you made a big effort to keep up with, and they tended to be the one or two platonic close friends. But the others, you kind of feel very guilty about not keeping up with, but you just don't have time because you're meeting all these other new people.
Yeah.
Right? And so they kind of gradually get pushed. Yes, you do.
Take you up. Put you in.
Yeah. And then, that means you're squeezing your time availability. And somebody has to go.
Someone has to go, yeah.
Right? And eventually you don't intend to push them
Actually,
out.
I quite like that because I don't like hoarding,
Yeah, well.
I quite like that, refreshing the... It's not bad. It's a good concept. But let's talk about, this thing. There's a lot of talk about people being infectious, people rubbing off on you. So one of the reasons why I've got this podcast is because I want to rub off on the wider planet in a very lovely, positive, and come on, let's do this so we can really like make change and do stuff here. You know, positive mindset and interviewing the right people with the right messaging and that kind of thing. And I love spending time with people like you because it's just wonderful. You know, you just filled with all this knowledge and it's a good influence, you know, and I hope that I'm radiating some positive energy towards you. But then you've got toxic people. You really do.
Yes.
Negative, damaging, not the right agenda. How do you deal with it? Like, have they always existed or have they become a thing in today's modern age? How do you deal with them? Everything about these toxic people and what do you do?
They've always existed. Usually in historically in the past, they tend to be people with psychopathic traits, right? And all small-scale societies have problems with these people because they're very destructive.
So they're biologically different, as in they've got like what? Because like psychopaths have extra chromosomes or
they've
things.
They've not got extra chromosomes.
What
they
is
just tend to have different alleles. So they tend to be very poor on the capacity to inhibit action, right? And so rather than hanging back and making a considered view. So if you think about it, you know, in the playground sense. So there you all are in the sandpit of life. And people are running.
Of life. I love
people are running up and down. Kids are running up and down, and you know, one of them kicks sand in your face, right? So what a psychopath will do is he goes and sorts the kid out, right? Because he assumes that it was malicious. Whereas a sensible person, social person, if you like, will sit back for a moment and go, "Was that an accident or not?" Right? And the right way to behave depends on whether it was an accident or whether it was done deliberately. Right? If it's an accident, you've got to forgive them and forget it. You know, if they did it deliberately, maybe you sort them out, whatever. But those kind of skills of diplomacy that allow you to keep a group functioning, you know, are very difficult to maintain in the context where somebody is constantly behaving as a psychopath. And they tend to be pretty violent people, and they tend to be in small-scale societies and small-scale tribal societies. They tend to be people who you know, are responsible for a lot of homicides, quite literally. And most of these small-scale societies live in fear of these people because they're so destructive. Never mind their personal risk they run; they're just destructive of the community. And your whole ability to survive depends on the community being cooperative and coordinated. So what happens in the end usually is the community gangs up against them. They get them drunk on Saturday night and sort them out forever, right? Or they get blamed for witchcraft, and then they get strung up for being witches. So that's extremely common in these small scale.
Yeah, so there's the extreme, there's the homicide ones, but then there's also, you know, in the Patrick Bateman, you know, there's all that kind of thing. But then there's ones that are just, you know, they exist, and they just, I don't know if it's hurt people, or what it is, but they see the world in a negative way, and so they respond negatively, and they cause, they manipulate, they cause trouble.
Yeah. This is what's known as the dark triad here. Psychopaths, narcissists, and exploiters, Machiavellian people. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
those guys.
You know, they're there.
We all know one or two.
You know, for the better or worse, Alexandra, they're the rich tapestry of social life that we have to cope with.
We love having them in the tapestry.
But
members, fantastic members.
You know, you're right that you know, life can't run smoothly if there are a lot of them. That's why they tend to be rather rare.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be totally destructive. And whether there's clearly some kind of genetic process going on. They're often associated with what's known as the warrior gene.
Oh, okay.
In the brain, which is one of the genes associated with bits of the brain, but it is tied up very much with this inability to inhibit. You know, they just are selfish, basically.
They grab things off their plate.
Grabs things off the plate, It doesn't matter if you don't get any. And if that becomes very destructive, either of your well-being and relationships or the community's relationships, somehow it has to get sorted out. And in small-scale societies, they were just, you got banished or you got killed.
I mean, there's movies about people like that all the time. And in a way, they've got a set so you can sort of almost feel sorry for them because you want them to have a friend. Well, and you think, why are you harming yourself all the time? Why are you acting like completely... In
the modern industrial world, we have these enormous communities. The point is they have places to hide. When you live in small villages, as we've done for, since time immemorial, long before history, until very recently. I mean, I think Rome was the first city to have 1 million people, and that was 2,000 years ago only, right? So we've not lived in these very large communities for very long, so we kind of don't have the skills to handle them, basically. But in small-scale communities, it is so destructive that you can't tolerate it. And you have to have some fairly, ultimate violent solutions. Otherwise, everybody just gets overwhelmed. In the kind of modern world where the world actually consists mostly of strangers, these people have places to hide, and that's why, so what you get in villages is communal policing. Right,
I like that. And communal policing.
People take a responsibility for dealing with or pacifying or sorting out in the nicest possible way people who are troublesome. And they police each other's kids and make sure they behave and don't become destructive. But once you get above about 150 people in an organization, whether it's a village or an organization or a business, that there is a loss of a sense of willingness to police, because what happens in a village is, I behave badly on Saturday night at the village dance. You decide to say something to me and I go, oh, Aleksandra, I'm terribly sorry. I was really appalling. I won't do it again. But if we're living in, an enormous modern city of 10 million people, my response to your trying to explain to me that my behavior is shockingly bad is, and who do you think you are? Right? Well, I don't owe you any obligation. By what right do you? That's why we have to end up having a police force to do it, right? Who's in some sense neutral. Whereas in small communities, the community acts as its own police force. And especially because of the kind of generational hierarchical structure, because sitting at the back of the village somewhere is great-grandma by her turf fire, wagging her finger, and she's maintaining the peace because all the great-grandchildren, who are all your second cousins, are all equally valuable to her, right?
Yes.
So don't you go upsetting little Jimmy because, he's one of my great-grandchildren too. Right. Yes. So you have this kind of very neat, in some ways, internal structurings, which are based on relationships. So you take great granny seriously because you like her, probably, or she's very fierce. They come in two varieties.
Yes.
And also she's backed up.
Yes.
By the older generations, right? So she can, individuals can impose discipline. And we accept that discipline out of a sense of obligation because we have meaningful relationships. It's when our relationships with each other are neutral, we have no relation because they're strangers. We don't really, I don't have any obligation to you. That's when you start getting sink estate problems.
Yeah, I think the individual speaking up and maintaining the standards is important.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you something very quickly. Someone littered the other day in the countryside on a route that I run on religiously, and I just saw him and he threw a little sushi box into the thing, and I just sort of stopped and I picked it up and I gave him, said, "That's yours because we don't litter in the countryside." And I ran off and he just sort of looks at me, but I think he won't want to do that again.
No.
And I might get into trouble one day for doing that, but I would. But I. You know
that's why people stop doing it, because most of the time
I don't mind that much even, because I would be angry with myself if I didn't say anything. Yeah. And I think I want that. I want that standard maintained in that countryside. Yeah. Full stop. That's it. Like, you don't come into this countryside and litter here, ever.
Yeah, but it depends on the wider community having that sense of obligation, and that you're not just being nasty and abusive and rude.
I'm helping him too, because he likes the countryside. He's there enjoying it.
He wants to be part of the community too. But that works fine. But the problem is, where relationships become utterly anonymous, then you have scope for people who are essentially psychopaths and selfish to go, I'm not going to take that from you.
Yeah, I know. Then you're in trouble.
And then you're in trouble.
Then you're in big trouble.
And that's why people stop kind of acting as good citizens. And when it becomes literally dangerous, or can become very dangerous. When you go to the aid where somebody's being attacked, and you go to the aid of an innocent person, and it's not, the police often say afterwards, don't do it.
Yeah,
ring for us.
Don't do it. Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
But then we need more police.
I know.
Yes, it's another conversation.
It's a quandary, but it's part of the fact that there aren't simple solutions in life. The real world is complicated, particularly the social world. The human social world is probably the most complicated thing in the universe. Partly because it's completely unpredictable, and partly because it involves so many different dimensions. Each person is a dimension. So you're not dealing with a kind of one-dimensional universe, which is just you. Yeah. You're dealing with a, sort of 500
mega complicated
individuals, each of whom has their own interests. And
they'll have their own thing.
It just becomes impossible to manage. So you end up having to engage in compromises. So everything in real life becomes a kind of compromise and a trade-off. And how important the trade-off is to you will determine what your solution.
Yeah, the negotiable, the non-negotiable, all that kind of thing. I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I've got more questions, but I'm going to condense the most important things because we have limited time now. What's the best tip that you can give, if we want to improve our social connections, have better friends, be closer? Is it singing, dancing with them, gossiping with them? What is it? How do we, what's the tip for everyone?
Well, I think the answer comes down to the mechanisms we use for fast tracking friendships, which are a set of behaviors that I refer to as our social toolkit. And these are laughter, singing, dancing, rituals, and in the normal world, the rituals of religion in particular, feasting, eating and drinking together socially, and storytelling. And all of those help to create a sense of community. But of those, by far the best is singing. We always refer to singing as the icebreaker effect, because we've shown choral singing, so singing together, right? Community singing. I mean, I don't mean, Bach cantatas or something fancy. I just mean old folk songs around the campfire. And what we've shown is you can take a bunch of complete strangers, give them an hour's community singing together, sort of Gareth Malone, community singing, the old songs that everybody knows, an hour of that, and they'll come out of it feeling as though they've known each other since they were at primary school. It's absolutely incredible how fast that is, and nothing else works as fast as that. And you actually haven't interacted with anybody. What you've done is stood in a circle, or maybe a line, and sang, but you've been singing in synchrony with each other, highly synchronized, and singing triggers the endorphin system, which is what provides the emotional raw feels component to relationships. And it does it very, very fast, much faster than anything else. Second best thing is probably eating together.
Eating, going out together. Yeah. So singing.
Which is why we do
eating together.
Arrange dinner parties.
Or podcasts.
That's
indeed. Another one. So Robin, it's been so lovely having you, and hopefully we'll do a part 2, get through the rest of the questions.
It's been a great privilege.
Thank you so much. Thank you.